And do the Pledge of Allegiance. And the good patriots.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Chairman, if we could just, one thing before we begin. I know you got quite a very extensive agenda, and I would recommend that in order to do justice to some of these, that you might want to take and end up putting some of them off to the next meeting.
Well, we'll see how we go.
And like
We
I
have
asked the other members, you have to speak up because I'm missing one hearing aid because it's in repair. And it's on your side.
I can't hear out of the left, and you can't hear out of the right?
It would make a good pair, right?
Yeah. Alrighty. First thing is the approval of the minutes from the last meeting.
I make a motion to approve the meeting minutes as written for November 15th advisory committee meeting.
Second.
All right, a motion made and seconded. Any discussion?
Yes.
Yes.
One of the things that was brought up was the the fact that interest rates were going up. If those folks hadn't seen the selectmen's meeting, the administrator made it very clear that he knows that the rates are going up in December, and he's trying to end up doing some things before February to end up trying to get, because the bans that he talked about will expire in February, and he's trying to go to bonds for the forthcoming year.
Okay, and what was,
Well, how's that related
is
to
that
the
a change
minutes?
on the minutes, or,
No, that's
Okay.
just a
well, is,
part of the discussion that was had last time. Extension.
any changes, additions, corrections on the minutes?
None that I can see.
Hearing none. Everyone all set? Mike?
Yes.
Tony?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Lee?
Yes.
Will?
Yes.
Minutes accepted at 18:39, 6:39. And I got most of the agenda by watching the last meeting and
Right.
reading the minutes. And the motion was to table the budget versus actual expenditure report dated for October until this meeting. So,
Yeah, they had just sent it. I think they had
Yeah.
only sent it like an hour before the meeting.
Right.
They handed it to us.
Oh,
Well, I had
Well,
gotten it in
they-
the email right before.
yeah, they sometimes email it and then, but she sent it to my other, yeah. So, does anyone have anything pressing that stands out?
what was the date on that?
14th of November.
14th of November?
Yeah.
One of the
Well,
things,
this, if you, the minutes reflected the one dated October
31 October.
18.
Well,
That was at the last
From-
meeting. I don't know if the 14 one,
So this, I just happened, they gave us the paper copies when we were here, so,
okay.
I received this by email on 11/15.
Yeah, I got 11:15.
And the date at the bottom of this document, it says end 10/31, but it's dated 11/14 at
Okay.
2 PM.
That makes sense.
The minutes reflect agenda items, review the October 31 budget.
Yeah,
So-
it's just because that's what it says at the top of the page.
Okay, because this one is dated October 18th. So either one, any issues?
One of the things I want to point out is that under the town accountant, after last night's meeting, they indicated that they were going to end up going to, come January, they're going to go to another payroll company, and that it would be taken out of the budget. And I'm just looking, they do have, it says, as of the 14th, it has 40,000, and I believe they did a 3-year contract for like $43,000, starting January 1st.
Okay.
Yeah, 43.5, I think.
We'll divide that by 3, so only 14,000 is appropriate.
And they had budgeted originally, I think, 19 or 12.5.
The original one under Harper's was 12,000. So this is, I think, another $3,000 more a year, 3,000 or 4,000.
Okay.
So I don't know what the impact will be long-term. It used to be broken down so we could actually see if they were gonna go over budget or whatever.
Yeah, you would have to go back and check. In the
Well,
budget presentation, they would have the individual items. But,
it was on the 15th.
but you don't get that from this.
The other thing I want to bring up is, at yesterday's meeting from the selectmen, that there's a big concern about the fact that the ambulance reserve receipt, they're not bringing in the amount of money that they have, and eventually that may end up having an impact, if they have to take monies like they did last year, the year before, at the fall town meeting to make it up, the shortfall, that may end up creating issues within the budget, even through this year as well as into next year.
The ambulance service not supporting itself, what a surprise.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Well,
So can we
Won't
back
go
up,
there.
can we back up to
Yes,
them using paychecks? Before we really comment on it, it's kind of difficult to say is, what does the current system provide? When is that contract up? Is the paychecks, what does it do for them? Does it give them more services? So without having someone come here and explain, well, we're going to paychecks because X, Y, and Z,
I believe,
I find it kind of hard to comment on them spending an extra, what potentially could be $3,000 over what they budgeted, when we don't know what they're getting for services. Maybe they're making that up and not having to pay other services.
Well,
I don't know.
it's rather interesting because I watched that meeting, and what they're doing is right now, they're having paper copies submitted for the payroll. And because they're going to the new payroll company, they're gonna put it on a tablet. They're gonna start one department per each, and there's the cost of the tablets that the town has to pick up. And there was no discussion as to how that was gonna be paid last night, except that the amount of monies for the contract, the 3-year contract for the new payroll company was gonna be part of it. And there was some questions as to how that was gonna end up being rolled out and what the impact was. And if you listen to some of the conversation, it seems that there is issues with the paper copies coming in because people don't understand the process about, and this is my understanding of what they were saying, is on overtime, when you have a department that has regular hours, then overtime, and then they come back at a regular shift. Example, highway department, when they go out to plow.
Yep.
Police department, because they have their own accounting system as to shift differentials, et cetera. That's some issues that still may not be addressed with this new.
Well, but I think the key word is may not be, so I think we need to wait to see, or
If
if
you,
we need to.
If you look under the selectmen's meeting
Yeah.
from last night, all of the backup paperwork,
Okay.
it's, let's see, what page is it? You have to, it's scroll down, if you look at the agenda packet material, you gotta go all the way past the last pictures of the, that basin truck that they're buying. And then it, has a memo from Kelly, and it explains, what she has to do with hoppers, and the companies that she checked with, ADP, check writers, and paychecks.
Where am I missing?
You have to open the,
It says that in the budget, there was $12,190 for hoppers, and the yearly cost for paychecks is quoted around $14,500, with one-time cost of $1,000 for the tablets. So I'm assuming a tablet is $1,000 per. And it has the benefits listed. They eliminate timesheets, except for police and fire. I don't know why, they're trying to get everybody, they're so harping on the sewer department doing this and this and this for the town. I don't know why the police and fire is gonna join the light and water and be separate, but, we'll have a tablet that the employees will use to time in and out.
go to last night.
I think that's sort of like some companies, you punch in like with your ID, you go to a register or someplace and you go click and nobody writes in your timesheet for you without, your ID.
Right.
Well, the highway department still uses time cards.
We have issues with employees not cashing payroll checks. If they go a couple of weeks without cashing their checks, well, I know it creates headaches for now.
I don't know where you.
So it's a one-page item. If you have further questions, maybe we could get either the accountant or Carter here at the next meeting to answer those things, or get more clarification, or maybe we could do it, send an email and maybe get better clarification.
Well,
I
they're
don't know
spending
if you'll
within- go ahead, Will.
I don't know if you'll end up getting the accountant here. My understanding is that the all boards meeting, there was department heads that didn't show up, and it seems that because even though they are salaried employees, that some of them probably didn't see it as or weren't able to make that, and there was some pushback on it by one of the selectmen, I hear.
So my thought on this is, I don't want to be a board that continually scrutinizes every little detail a board does. If they're spending within their budget and they're executing things for the town, they're hired for a reason. I mean, you just can't, if you don't think they're doing the job, then that needs to be done. But if it's her job to figure out what the right payroll company for the town is.
Is it really? She's the accountant.
Well, who does the accounting?
The accountant.
Okay?
Is she spending time on what I would consider as a project that the management fellow should have been working on?
Well, okay, but where does it say that that's part of his duties?
Yeah, he's on
I-
a,
Where does it say that it's part of hers?
She's the accountant. She's the one that accounts for the
She
town.
doesn't
Does she
do the payroll.
Who does the payroll?
They have a person that does the payroll.
But under what office?
Individually, they end up getting submitted to the department heads who approve it and then submit it.
No, that's not what I mean is, who is responsible for identifying the payroll, the company that they're
That's
gonna
through the
use for
treasurer's,
payroll?
the treasurer ends up writing the checks. So I would assume that it's within the
Okay.
treasurer collectors.
I would like to just stop right here. I will email Carter, and we'll get clarification on this, and perhaps request him at our next meeting, so we can get a definitive answer of,
Well,
Who
it could be
does
at the
what?
next meeting, but I just, I mean, we have to let people do their jobs at some point.
but
If
it
the-
is an increase in spending,
if
and
it- absolutely,
is it
Jeff.
worth it?
Right, so absolutely.
I-
If it is an increase above what the approved budget is, then you wanna look at the value to the town by spending an extra $5,000 or $10,000. But if it's within the current budget that the town has approved for them to administer their job as the accountant, as the treasurer, we keep,
Well, the thing is, and I have to go look at, let's see, the town accountant, it's gonna be purchase of services. The key is what is included, listed individually in the budget book. Like, if you look under selectmen, for example, if you recall, at the special town meeting, they had several items coming out of the selectmen, it was the legal, right? And that
Right.
is listed under purchase of services, because they group it together. Individually, in the book, it's $60,000. But if you look on here, for legal services, if you look on here now, it has 71,000, because we added that money to the original annual town meeting allocation. And I remember the question was, why do they need $5,000 in additional for legal at this early of the fiscal year?
Yep.
Back in
and
October.
I would agree with that.
And it was only showing that they had spent $1,400 out of purchase of services for selectmen. So, when you look at the town accountant, that group of purchase of services, it has $40,000, and it looks like, well, they're only gonna need 3,000. But what does that purchase of services title? What are the subgroups underneath that?
So was she asking for more money above the budget of $40,000?
Well, 40,000 is what is left.
Okay, but was she asking for an additional 3,000 for this year in addition to that 40,000?
But is that all that is coming out of purchase of services, is just the payroll? Is that it? Or is there other things that individually
Individually,
add up to the 40?
individually, I think Harper's was listed separately and bulked into that. So that's a concern. If you ended up saying so much for Harper's, and now you go to another accounting firm, and it's more money.
Okay, but,
Okay, yes, you're right. It's her budget, but it's not coming from an account that was listed as what was there. And I mean, let's look to the chase here. We're the watchdogs of this community, and we should be looking at everything.
well, I get that,
So,
but at some point, we have to let these people do their jobs. We cannot be an effective board if we go down to every single nickel. If someone is mismanaging their funds, then we should do this. I have not watched a select board meeting. I will, but, okay, so currently we have in the budget 12,190 for Harper's. So I'm assuming that the contract is up with Harper's. They had to go out and,
No,
so they're just switching.
they're gonna terminate the contract and go to the,
Okay, why are they gonna terminate the contract?
because they're going to the new payroll system.
Okay, but why?
What's the penalty?
Because they were going from a paper system, like I said, to the
Electronic.
pallet,
Okay.
the tablet.
the reason for the change is that we both feel Harper's is not able to handle the needs of the town. We need a report for 5 employees, however, Harper's only offers us 2 filter items for reporting. So we
Okay.
have to run 3 different reports to get what we are looking to complete. The company we are looking at offers numerous types of filters and has a much better reporting system.
Okay.
The
So what is
first company I reached out was ADP. This company,
Expensive.
the town used before,
Yeah, it's at the bottom.
and I remember when they had them, I believe I was a selectman at the time. They were the highest priced company we talked to, and Nicole, I'm assuming that's someone in either the treasurer or the accountant's office, just came from a position where ADP was used and didn't have good results. The second company was Check Writers, a small payroll company in Springfield. They were the lowest priced company. After reviewing the demo, They have the same reporting model that Harper's, and really isn't gonna solve anything. And Paychex is the company I would like to go with, because their price was in the middle. The benefits we will get, I will be worth the little extra cost. So currently in the budget, we have $12,190 for Harper's, and the yearly cost for Paychex is $14,500, plus the one-time cost of $1,000.
See, one
So
of
is
the
that
things,
1,000 per tablet or for total?
It says one-time cost of $1,000 for the tablets.
Okay.
So the question
So
would be.
essentially,
how many tablets?
Right.
Tablets?
See, one of these things, as far as, is the increase that she's looking at, it's unbudgeted and unplanned for. I would have expected at least the highway department or this individual saying, hey, I need some additional money because we didn't plan for this, and it's gonna benefit the town, and come to the emergency reserve. But you have an administrator that does not let them do their job. Period.
okay, but it sounds like if she can run one report to get the information she needs versus 3, there's time savings there where she can be doing other stuff, not knowing how long it takes to run a report, and how often does she have to run a report? So,
Well, she said one department took
So-
a day and a half to do their payroll.
so why is it that we are discounting her saying the current system doesn't work for what she needs to do for the town? Why is that a problem? Is it just because it cost a couple $1,000s more? Maybe there's some efficiencies bought with those couple $1,000s that it ends up being a wash. We don't have all the information.
Checks will take the full cost of the payroll and issue the checks. And that's what the explanation here is lacking. Is it gonna be a time saver? Is it gonna be a money saver to justify the increased yearly cost? Because you're right, if you're gonna spend an extra $2,000 that in the long run is gonna save you $5, then you're stupid not to do it. If it's gonna save you $500, it's worth it. If it's just gonna cost that much more to free up time for the accountant, then what is the accountant gonna do with that saved time?
I would
I mean,
have
it's,
liked to see that instead of writing this up, that she actually went and did the cost analysis, like the DLS actually has a document that says, here's the things you should look at to take and end up seeing if it's cost effective and if you're saving money. If you had gone through that process and showed exactly what Jeff was saying is, I'm gonna spend 3, but I'm going to take and end up saving 5, then there's a net savings of 2. I'm all for that. That makes sense economically. But that's not what you have on paper.
She doesn't talk about cost savings. In fact, cost is not her driving motivator. Efficiency is what she's trying
Well,
to
but you can
gain
relate-
out of it.
And
She says the current one does not meet the needs that we have. In fact, it actually causes us to lose man hours.
Which efficiencies is money.
Efficiency
Absolutely.
is money, it's just,
So that's her bottom line. She says, this is how much is in the budget, this is the homework that I've done, this is what I would recommend, and here are here's the efficiencies that we're gonna get out of using paychecks. And it looks like it's only $1,000, as she describes it, for the tablets. It would be nice to get that full briefing, I agree, Will, to be able to say, how are they gonna use paychecks? How is it actually gonna work? What is a department head gonna do? How does that tablet connect? Or do they have to bring it in and have it sync up to a?
how much time do you spend on the tablet versus doing on the paper?
Right.
would an explanation, if I can get one, if you want, I will send an email to Carter and see if I can get an explanation via email.
Yes,
or would
that's fine.
you
No,
like-
that's
Well,
fine.
what's our role in this discussion? What's our role in this
To
discussion?
see what the effect of the budget is, and what's the cost.
So I wanna know,
Is there a cost savings
there
to
an-
the town?
Or is
She's
there?
gonna
an-
be over budget, is what it looks like to me.
But in the long
So is that the
run,
question?
is that the eye of, you
Right.
know, is it just to free up time for you? And what will be gained by freeing up that time? Because let's face it, okay, I got my task done, you know, in 4 hours. What do you do
Yeah.
with the rest of your work day?
And this is the first we heard of this, correct?
Yeah.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, this,
I mean, I think we could come back with a recommendation to say, we have some questions that could affect the town's finances negatively. If she took the time to do some research and actually propose it where it's not gonna be like, I need this by next week. I mean, honestly, it's, you know, I want this by next month. She wants it by January 1st. Has she already terminated the contract with,
As of December, at
Harper?
the end of December. That's
so she gave them notice?
After the selectmen's meeting, I think if my understanding, the way it was going,
I'll get that.
that after the end of the selectmen's meeting, if the selectmen said, go ahead, then she was going to end up notifying Harper's that the contract was done, and they're going with they would have the contract with the new company.
So I'll re-ask my question, because I did not watch the meeting.
Right,
Did she ask for an additional 3,000-4,000-ish
right.
from the select board? Or was she just telling them, this is what we're doing? Did she say, I don't have it in my budget of the 40,000 left for services,
Right, 'cause it
that
can
she
operate
needs
in a
to
negative.
essentially plus that account
She said
up?
she would take it out of her budget, but the thing of it is, if you look at the budget, Harper's was only 12,000. This is additional money
Yeah.
under that particular
Yes.
aspect.
She can't spend in the negative.
Right. So
Right.
she, under services, so she had, let's round it off, say $12,000
Yep.
for a payroll service. Now she wants to go to 14, whatever it was.
Right, 14.5.
Okay. So-
15.5 if you add the
So
tablets.
the one question I want to know is, can she absorb that, the delta of the 1,000 and the 3,000, whatever? Can she absorb that within her current
She
budget?
says she can.
We
Then
will
I don't know what the
definitely
issue
We will
is.
definitely know by
I
May
agree.
1st.
I honestly, if she
Especially
says
if
she
they've already
can,
voted on
I
it.
don't know what the issue is.
Well, we will definitely know by May 1st, because if it's not gonna make it the end of the year, there will be a
Right.
financial transfer request
Right.
for them last 2
Yep,
and a half
I
months.
concur with that, but, I mean, I've never met Kelly that I know of, and, I mean, if she believes she's paid to do a job, so if she believes she can absorb the cost, what do we have to doubt her?
Well, like I said, if you're fine with that, I will email and see if we can just get clarification, just so we can sit here and tell the public
3310.
definitively
33
this,
times the
this, and
delta.
this.
The other issue that came out of there, and I'm gonna ask our representative for the capital planning, for the highway department's coming for like $9,000 for cleaning the catch basins, a new amount of money, and it wasn't clear as to where that money was gonna come from. I don't know, if it didn't sound like it was coming out of the budget or whatever. It would be interesting to find out where that amount of money was going to be coming from.
I could give you my guess,
Where,
in free cash. That's my guess.
you might be right.
Because I did not hear where they were pulling the money from.
Yeah.
So that's another kind of catch-22, because, not to be funny about catch basins, but the current truck is broken, they can't fix it.
They found
So
one for
they
$9,000.
they found one that's cheaper, so they feel like instead of hiring somebody out to do it, this benefits them. I just feel like sometimes we doubt everything anyone says. Not we, but collectively, emails I see, that everybody doubts. If the town administrator says something, you don't believe
Yeah.
him.
I trust what he says, I just wanna see it on paper.
Yeah. I don't think we're doubting her, or at least I don't perceive it like that. I think that we're just making sure that, you know, she has done her due diligence to say, I'm not gonna overspend and this is the reason I am. Can I have a transfer now? Or can you pay for this for me or something?
And I would
that's
absolutely
fine.
agree with that. I mean, if she came up and said, okay, this is why I think it's a benefit for the town, however, I'm gonna need additional $3,300, then the TA can decide, okay, we have money here, we can move to give to you, whatever the case may be. But
It sounded like he actually had some apprehensions, but he was letting her, and this is just in the dialogue that was going on, it sounded like there was apprehension, but he was going to let his department head go ahead with this, suggest it, and go ahead with the overall plan, because they're going to implement it one department at a time, and they're still going to continue with, even with the new payroll company, they're gonna continue all the rest of the departments on paper copies.
okay, well,
So, I mean,
usually it takes a while to roll stuff out.
yep.
So
Well, we've had problems in the past, and they say it's gonna work with Vadar, and when you see that you went from cities and towns to Vadar, and how badly that transfer happened in software, and what happened to the town, you question the smoothing, and you say, and if you had an experience with IT on changing software, it never goes as smoothly as what you'd like.
Yeah, well, the thing with cities and towns, that was a small, developed by an individual and used on a very small basis, and there wasn't a lot of people in the state that could understand it. This is a board that says they have a policy, they have a plan for everything, and now we're doing more and more stuff in the middle of the year.
Right.
And it doesn't seem like they either really have a plan, or their plans aren't that well
Made,
thought out.
followed, you know?
Uh,
They're not thought out.
to the point that, the DLS, there's a thing, it's called costing, and they even have a booklet on it.
Yep.
And you go through all of the things that you're gonna, like this truck they're gonna buy. Oh, it's only $9,000. What about the fuel? What about the maintenance?
This should cost stuff.
You know, what about the man hours, the total cost of the town operating that truck versus, including the health insurance, and if an accident happens now, cleaning a basin and somebody hits.
So really, it's just a delta cost, because they already had that services and budgeted for those services, fuel maintenance of the old truck. So they're just replacing the equipment,
But they
so to
went,
speak.
they went to a contractor, and they said we need $13,000 for that service, but now they're saying, well, if we buy a truck, it's gonna be cheaper,
Well,
or it's gonna be faster. But
said both.
I don't see that
Well,
happening.
they had an older truck, that they used to take and end up cleaning the basins out.
Yeah, yes, it was an old fire truck, hand me down.
Yep.
That was a bad move, and this is not much better of a move.
Mr.
In
Chairman,
my
just to
opinion.
finish on the other item, can we get, when you email the town administrator, can we get clarity on if this new payroll system is gonna be driven across departments gradually, and is each department gonna cover the cost of their own tablet? If each department needs a tablet to institute it, like, just sort of, are all those final costs coming out of what they've already budgeted for their payroll for the year anyway?
I don't understand what they need for the tablet.
That's why I said, some of this is unbudgeted, unanticipated, they're changing
Right.
direction.
And
You
the
would think they would
tablet-
come to emergency reserve.
Right. Well, we don't know that, because the numbers we're given
Right,
show us 4 general
Exactly.
funds,
yep.
Cost,
which
comma,
continues to drive me a little nuts.
Like,
From what budget?
there's paychecks right there.
Because in my opinion, if all the departments can cover this change themselves, then we have no issue. I have no issue. I would think we as a unit would
My
have
thing
no
is,
issue.
I just don't
I concur.
like this changing in the middle stream, because to me, it indicates a poor plan.
Well, I don't know intimately what's going on in that department. Maybe this, to them, is the best time for them to change, and I don't know. I'm sort of with Tony on that. Let's give them all the benefit of the doubt to do their job the best they
Well-
can, and maybe this is the best way they know how to do it right now.
Unfortunately, I remember when they went to town meeting and said we wanna take $100,000 out of fire and EMS salaries, cause we have way more money in there than we need, and we wanna pay the snow and ice budget. And the next month is, oops, we didn't really have that 100,000 to take out. Now we need some money from here and here and here and here and here and here to put back in the fire and EMS salaries, and a few other misgivings, and it just sticks in my brain, so.
Okay, I mean, I understand.
When I see this stuff, I just,
Yeah, I understand that
I wanna go.
your long history with this stuff kind of lends you to be more,
I mean, I would like to
apprehensive
hope
about
this
stuff.
works, and,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
that it works. I mean, if it benefits the town and in the long run it saves money, then it's a damn smart thing to do. But it's just, I have this recollection of things, that,
Well, was it mentioned that the contract is up at the end of this year? Or in December?
I think they're gonna terminate the contract.
no.
Okay, so they're terminating, okay.
Yeah, if it was all gonna
So,
run out,
so if they are terminating, then I'd like to know if there's a termination fee.
yes,
You could ask the
yeah,
TA
'cause
that.
That's, I'll add that to, I don't know when.
And the talk was that they wanted to take and let Harper's finish out the year because of the end of the year, taxes.
That makes
And they would have
sense.
to file all of that.
That would make sense.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense from that perspective.
Yeah.
You can't get rid of them in early December and expect somebody else to pick it up.
Right, no, I mean, you got all those W-2s they gotta
Okay,
produce.
so is there a termination expense or a penalty? The cost of the tablets, what budgets will them come from? Is it $1,000 for all tablets or $1,000 per?
I guess I'd wanna know,
And is there
what are the tablets
enough
for?
money to cover this?
You would think they had a
Yeah, in each department.
I looked it up.
If it's gonna go, like, if it's gonna start in one office and then
Offices
sewer
that
will
go-
pick it up,
can just go
or
up on their
all the
website.
other,
And
you
if
know,
they gotta pay
highway.
for each department has to pay
Right,
for
right.
the
Do they
tablet.
each need their own station, I guess?
If there was an attachment here as a phase-in on how they were gonna do department by department, that would also help understand the phase-in process that they would go through and what the impact would be.
Well,
Alrighty.
they can't really phase it in if they're gonna terminate with Harper's.
Well, that's.
Well, they're going paper copies, but phase in the new tablets
Oh,
I'm talking
okay.
about.
Okay. I mean, with today's technology. I mean,
Because
people-
there's training
people can-
involved, et cetera.
People could Paychex probably has an app for your phone that they could put their time in.
Yeah, people pay with their little phone with the little scan thing on there, here, get your paycheck. We'll just put money in this thing for you and. But I think those little things, little pesky things like state laws and stuff get in the way of that stuff. On the municipal side. So, is that enough, on those items?
Yeah, the agenda item was for the budget to actual, but we
Yes.
kind of
A little
incorporated some
sidetrack.
subtopics.
So, any other, issues on any other items? Is anything else?
No, the one thing that we did talk about, staying within this agenda item, is that we had a lot of questions about gifts and otherwise, and the town administrator did a good job of satisfying our interest on how we were going to kind of get some fidelity on where these stood. So he left the meeting pledging that he was gonna do something about that to get the gifts and grants under control.
Yeah, I saw that
To come
email,
up, yep.
that, he was gonna look in that and work on that. And like I
So
said,
that's the kind of
not-
thing I think our board is good at, to
Yeah.
take a look at something like that and, something that might be right in front of their face every operational day of the town, but they just don't have the time to look at it. I
Right.
think that's where we come in and are able to say, we think that you could gain some efficiency if you actually, pooled these things and come up with some ideas for expending these unused gift accounts.
Yeah, I think that there's still some unknowns as it relates to some of them, how and who can spend it.
Yep.
And I think that Carter took the action to go and figure that out.
Yeah, whatever that's gonna be, whether
Yeah.
finding relatives.
Yep.
That, hey, this trust fund, what do you mean? No, you can't do that with that trust fund.
Right.
So, I mean, just get an answer one way
Yep,
or
and
the
it, and
other.
it seemed
Right.
like that they took that action to go do that. I don't know that that's gonna be a quick remedy, but at least they're gonna work on it.
And it's been there for
Years.
a long time, and it's not the first time it's come up, but if there's some genuine movement on it, and they have, I think we will have some dollars to do some of the work, whatever may need to be done, to at least, if they could address just, you know, some of
This to me is
those.
a mini project. When you have a mini project in any business, you have a project laid out as to how much the cost is, what's the impact, what's the rollout, et cetera, and you don't see any of that. I would hope that that's being done. But
So,
history has, I guess, jaded me in saying, we don't do it that way. We don't go that extra yard to get what we really need to take and roll something out effectively. We just do it by the shoestrings.
It's also new people. So, I mean, some of the people are still around, but, you know, for the
They're
most part.
still here.
But there's a lot of new people too, so, again, I tend to give people the benefit of the doubt. You guys come from a different place, because you've been doing this a lot longer than we have, and you've seen some of the past transgressions, but, you know, maybe in a couple of years, I'll feel the same way you do.
Well, I don't think it's gonna take you a couple of years if you stay on.
But no, he did, with the questions and stuff that was asked of him, he did get the emails out, explaining a lot of those things out pretty quick.
Yep.
Which, so is there anything else?
On the budget to actual, no.
Yes, dated 11/14.
Right, the actual report is ending 10/31.
Right.
Yep.
And when did this one actually end? Yeah, September's.
All I can say is later on, when we get into the third quarter, I'm just concerned that the same thing that happened last year doesn't happen this year. Here we have a budget, and all of a sudden, where the administrator is saying, hold on to that, don't spend money, because he sees it already that the budget, or I shouldn't say the budget, the spending is gonna be out of whack, and that, at the end of the year, there may not be money in some of the accounts.
All right.
Well, like anything, the revenues are predictive. You know, he went through the whole process of how they try to figure out how much money the town's gonna have, and if like we talked earlier about ambulance receipts, and if they're not meeting what they expect, then the next few years, those numbers are gonna be adjusted down. But until you get good data on that stuff, you still have to go with what you know. So is it people are spending more, or is it the revenues are not coming in as projected, therefore, we don't have the money's not there to spend?
Yeah.
That's,
I think there's a
for the ambulance
difference.
receipt, I think that's what he said.
Right, so I think there's a difference of people overspending their budgets versus
The revenue's coming in.
spending versus revenue.
Right, and in that particular case, you're right.
It's, like many towns, we still have a structural deficit, because we only have X amount of dollars coming in, and we have little control over expenses going up. I mean, the list is like A to Z, and can't deal with it like a private company or an individual would. So, if we're all done with the budget, the expenditure report.
Yep.
The next item, and again, this was, according to the minutes in the meeting I watched, was tabled to this meeting, is the Collins memo.
Is there anything in there for us to even discuss?
That memo contained a lot of information. What really pointed to this committee was the bylaw and segments of it. And I believe this was done in preparation for when uh, the selectmen proposed many changes to the bylaw affecting the advisory committee. And this wasn't sent to us in that process. We weren't alluded that benefit. Actually found out about this after the fact at a meeting when the Collins was giving
They did some type of presentation.
a report of them finishing up their time and reporting that they still had a few dollars left on the grant, and if there was any other business that the selectmen wanted them to do. And one of the things in here in the report was that they claimed that the only other town that, where the advisory committee or finance committee had a say in replacing openings was Townsend. And I believe I emailed everybody. I spent a few minutes online, and the town of Bolton does the same thing. Their committee, if there's a vacancy, the advisory committee votes in a new member. It's the same way. You serve the remainder of the term until the next town meeting, and then that would be filled by the normal procedure of the moderator. And it also addressed the sort of duplication in the statement of Article 3, Section 4, and Article 4, Section 4 of the advisory committee, where it basically says that the Article 3, Section 4 says the town administrator, in conjunction with the Board of Selectmen, will create the budget and require the various boards and committees in format prescribed by them. And then the original bylaw that was passed in 1951 or something, says basically the same thing. And also, the Collins memo also talks about the budget process, having financial policies and all of that.
It's their recommendation.
And
Yeah.
most of that has been, some of those things have been implemented by the board. The thing is still there is the bylaw, and to me, the big thing is the duplication, where it says, you know, various boards and committees will report to the advisory committee and present their expenditures in a format prescribed by that committee, and they
That's
will
what
add a
ours
second,
says.
second column, and I guess their recommendations, and they also talk about, you know, we have bylaws and other towns have charters where it's in detail described who does what, how it does. And they did some local towns comparisons, Athol, Ashburnham, Air, Dudley, Lancaster, Townsend, Shirley, Orange, all of that. Like I said, the thing that I was interested in was the part on the advisory committee vacancy appointments, and the sort of dual bylaw statement, and to me, one of those has to change. The wording, you know, either needs to be removed, or you need to come up with a whole different, maybe we look at the bylaws, and some sections are good to go, and other sections maybe need to be changed or added. They said when it was done in 51, and a lot of towns, especially small towns, still do it that way, where the finance committee or advisory committee will actually create the budget and present it. Other communities, it's created, but the advisory or the finance committee will present it. In other towns, especially with charters, with town managers and stuff, it's sort of like more of a conjunction, a combined effort. Which then I think, the town manager and the selectmen, they bring that, he brings it to town meeting, but the advisory has, or the finance committee, they have like first refusal, and they get the first shot at making amended motions, but it's spelled out in their charter, we don't have that. So we have to deal with what we have and what works for this town, because it's gonna go before the town meeting, any changes in the bylaws, and, you know, they're gonna go for what they want. And I believe the town administrator and that second part, which kind of replaced the section of the bylaw that was originally voted on, in which we got an opinion from a former town council of an approach to try to fix that. And I think that should be one of the first things that the selectmen do, is put that section back that creates the town administrative position and spells out his duties and responsibilities, along with that current section 4 where it says they will do the budget. Because we're not in the 50s no more. We're, you know, it's 2018. Most town, even Phillipston, that little town of Phillipston now is looking, they're doing a wage study compensation plan. Templeton did, I don't know, 10 years ago or something, spent 10, 15 grand on, and I think spent another 5 to 10. But they're even looking to go to a more of a full-time, I don't know, town coordinator, executive assistant, something, but more of a full-time person, because selectmen part-time is just not, you know, as somebody at the finance committee meeting 3 years ago, when it was the last time it was at Devon's, not this past one, but the first one, we sat down with some people from Shrewsbury, and the members of the finance committee is, yeah, you know, you don't want volunteers doing, I don't know, whatever their budget is, 20 million or whatever Shrewsbury's is, rather large. And, you know, you have a point. You know, people got things to do, you got jobs, got this, to that. It's a lot of focus, a lot of work to put together a budget. When you're gonna find time, town employees, they don't go to all boards meetings. They don't show up at selectmen's meetings, because why? It's after hours. How do you force them to come to something like that? So it's gotta, you know, you do it during the workday. It's just reality, and it's the way it is. And at some point in time, I guess maybe with this committee, since it affects us, we should take the bull by the horns and have a meeting where we just, the thing on the agenda is accept the minutes from the last meeting and the bylaw, and see what we choose to do about it. Do we wanna put it together and present it to the selectmen as, hey, this is what we wanna do? And that there's no guarantee that they will put it on.
I absolutely think that they're open to suggestions. And I think if we as a unit went to them and said, this is what we've come up with for this bylaw situation, this is what our opinion of what we envision using the collective knowledge. I mean, you guys have so much knowledge
Well,
of
it's
different
just-
cities and
it-
towns.
It's on the internet,
But
there's
still,
all
pushing
kinds
it
of
forward,
scale.
but pushing, if we ask for them to look at what we've compiled, I have every reason to think that they would be very happy to have that off their collective plate as well. Because I don't think they wanna work it any more than we wanna have this hanging around behind us either.
Because they have done it 2 or 3 times, 2 or 3 years in a row, or meetings in a row, and Tony spoke to it
Right.
last spring. But, and you're right, because the subcommittee to address it has, I
Right.
have nothing from them. It's like they, and yes, one selectman is leaving.
Gone.
But the other one, I mean, no one, other than the town clerk, you know, creating a space on my town government, but no, hey, what's the advisory committee? Hey, when's a good time to meet? This, that, ever since I was pointed out to them that, hey, your selectman that was here said, subcommittee, we'll get out of the open meeting law. Well, you can't do that. Subcommittee's covered by the open. If you just had a representative from this group and that group meet, yeah, then you get away from that, the open meeting law. But so they haven't pushed, haven't
Right.
talked, asked, or anything.
So what do we
I-
wanna do? What do we want to, what sort of action do we wanna take with this right now?
May I end up injecting something here?
Yes,
As you know, as Mr. Bennett has already, he's also one that does a lot of checking. I do a lot of checking. In here, I have quite a few towns, advisory committees, appropriation committees, advisory warrant committees, et cetera, and how they operate. I looked at how much we spent for Collins, tens of thousands of dollars, and they had a team of people to do this, and they only come up with one. Well, one lazy advisory committee member took some time. And I want to take it end up telling you that I found, and I haven't gone through all the committees, all the communities yet. There's 351 communities, cities and towns. You take out the cities, you take out the communities that have town council, basically, they're the finance, they don't have a finance committee, and you've probably got about 300 communities, so I haven't gone through all of them. Here's what I have found. The following towns: Townsend, Bolton, Shrewsbury, Weston, West Brookfield, West Bridgewater, Sharon, Oakham, and Ipswich all have the same way, as far as the members are concerned, replacing them, as we do. In addition to that, there's another 12 communities: Pembroke, Plainfield, Raynham, Sterling, Stoneham, Halifax, Wareham, Great Barrington, Windham, Toro, Cohasset, Sterling, that also end up having the advisory committees sit on and choose their own members, along with either the moderator or the select board or some type. So there is membership from committees on 21 communities I found that sit in and choose their individual members when there's a vacancy.
Okay, so you guys have the long history of this committee over the, not including the new appointments.
Yep.
Let's just say over the last 5 years, how many vacancies have you had?
Quite a few.
And then how many of those did you not appoint? How many of those were appointed by the moderator based on the current process? Okay, so then I'm not sure what the issue is. If the process is the moderator appoints them, however, the moderator's not able to come up with a candidate, it falls on the committee to appoint that person, so I'm not sure what the issue is.
Because that was the suggestion by the memo.
That's the
that it
suggestion. They
needs
want,
to
they
get
can
rid of
change that.
They wanted, the selectmen's proposal was to remove that part of the bylaw, that we would not, the committee would not appoint, fill a vacancy. That would be strictly done by the moderator. And when Deb came on, I sent an email to the
Yeah.
moderator, because you
Yep.
never know how many people,
Okay, all
10
right.
people applied.
Then
at any
I
town meeting.
misunderstood how that worked.
So that was the first thing I did, and I believe that's what Will's done in the past, and either chairman
Yeah,
before
I
him.
don't think that bylaw should
Gordon Moore,
change.
Mike Green,
I don't think so.
and I emailed Derek, and I didn't get nothing back. So then I emailed Holly Young in the selectmen's office, hey, do you have any interest forms on file? She sent back, she goes, I have none, Jeff.
I mean, truthfully, if
So-
she gets an interest form for this board or this committee, as a courtesy, it should be sent to you. Or if the TA gets it, as a courtesy, they should send it to you, just to say, okay, we do, just so you know, if for whatever reason someone couldn't do it.
Not
they
even
have
who it
these-
is, just that we have one on file.
Right.
So-
Yeah, exactly.
Like I said, like I told Deb, I'm just glad to see somebody show some interest and wanna
Yes.
take a stab at, volunteering.
Now, being on here for 7 years, it's always come down to the process that you just heard Jeff do. You go to the moderator, do you have anybody? No. You go to the administrator, is there anybody on file that's going to? No. Then it's up, and sometimes it's taken us as much as 6 months ourselves to fill a vacancy. And no, I'm not talking about just one vacancy. There was a time when we had a couple vacancies that we had to fill.
So based on that information, I don't think the bylaw should change.
Well,
Not not that section.
Yeah.
can I add some more to that, Jeff? or-
So we don't, like, stay here all night? I liked Amy's decision, or suggestion that we do take this whole thing and and come up with a plan forward at a future meeting?
I was just looking
That
at,
was Jeff's.
next week, I take it would not be a good, people traveling next week.
I'm traveling. Oh, actually, you know what? I will be, I come back on Thursday, so
I don't
it'll
get
be a long
I
day,
come
but
back-
I'll be here.
I come back
But I think
Thursday, but not till late
This is
at night.
something that maybe next week is rather quick for everybody to do a lot of homework on it, cause I would like, I think, I mean, I've done more homework on it than I should.
Yep.
My dog lets me know. Oh, seriously, too much computer time. But I think this, for everybody, I don't think next meeting on the 6th is a time enough to look at it. Because just, I know everybody's busy, everybody can't put, 20 hours a day into advisory committee. Just unrealistic.
Some of us do.
Well, maybe, so, down the stairs,
Yeah.
I know, it's a long trip. Sometimes that commute could be tough, but, maybe the meeting after that. So not on the
Be
sixth,
right
but,
before Christmas.
Can I add some more
I
to
don't even
that?
know if we need to. I mean, Mr. Chair, if in the context of the Collins memo, it has basically two recommendations or two findings. What is what is Templeton's advisory committee's role in the budget process? And what is it with appointing members? It sounds like the board that we have right now already acknowledges that our bylaws are adequate, because even if we don't have somebody, like the moderator, the till is empty. Moderator says to the clerk, I got nobody. Moderator says to us, I have no one. We wind up recruiting, or, hey, we go out to a member in community, just like we did. What do? We follow the town's policy of filling out that form, the community interest form. They give it to the clerk. The clerk, touches base with the moderator to see if there's any conflict or otherwise, to make sure that they take the open meeting law and all that sort of stuff. I think we're there. We're basically following what the Collins memo says, to say, yes, some communities allow for appointments within the advisory.
Yep.
Now, the one specific one that we talked about, I think it was a little bit misconstrued, that the advisory committee appointed their own. They don't. Two people are appointed in order to do that. Like, the selectmen expressly said, you have your, so in this case, it would have been Jeff and Lee would have been appointed by the appointing board, which includes the selectmen, and then you two go pick the rest of them. That's what that community does. The way that we do it right now, I think our board is saying we're good with that.
Right,
And that's the first thing.
Yes.
The
But we
other
need to
recommendation is
enumerate
the
that.
budget. Yeah, but I
No, I think that we do need to probably redraft just to state. So for the next people coming behind us,
yeah.
after we all die, because we'll clearly be here forever, we should put it forward that that's the procedure.
Plan.
That when you have a vacancy, the form gets filled out, it's given to the town clerk, who notifies the moderator, so that essentially it comes from the moderator, even if we've fed it, just like any other
Exactly,
resident,
exactly
we've
right.
fed it through.
Yeah.
Yes.
But that is different than what our current bylaws say.
Oh.
That's what I was alluding to
Yeah.
when I
So
said
we rewrite
standard
it.
operating
We rewrite it.
procedures
We rewrite it and we
is,
give it to them.
I've spent a lot of time looking at a lot of communities, and a lot of communities fall back on the moderator. If we had to do that in this town, we would not have, in past years, we would not have been able to operate.
Right.
We had gotten the advisory down to that level where we would, if the amount of members, and if you had somebody that was absent, we could not operate. Because
So-
that individual didn't have anybody, or wasn't actively looking for somebody. I mean, there's a lot of cuts on how this is done. The other cut is when you look at how the budget process is.
Okay, so we're moving on. You're talking about the budget process now.
Okay, you want to take okay, just talk.
So our action item for that is that our recommendation is that we are going to write it the way that it needs to be.
so when,
And then you can go into the other one, because we either follow the recommendation or we don't.
I mean, when you do state
Hold on.
that,
Hold on.
you
Next
end up
meeting is-
pointing out you got other communities that do it the same way,
care about
and
other
we have, and our experience is this is what we have done.
Our next meeting is December 6th. Okay, that's
Next
next
Thursday.
week. And after that, it's the 20th, which is approaching Christmas.
Right.
I personally, I just soon have an advisory committee on Christmas, but that's just me.
You're sick.
I guess I could have one by myself. Uh,
No, you wouldn't have a quorum.
Well, now just, me and Bear will just talk. I'll put a vest on him and he'll be a service dog and I'll be all set. So is that a good, and I'm just thinking with the, and I hope I sent it out to everybody about the articles for town meeting. Fast approaching deadline,
Yes,
when they
yeah,
would
you sent
like,
that. Yep.
anything you want on the annual town meeting. It seems a little tad early, but, and of course, the only way you can guarantee something will be on the warrant is by a citizen's petition. But we could present, and we'll present it as an advisory committee, which we have done in the past.
Okay.
Once in a while it gets on, other times it's,
If they agree,
Nope.
the Board of
I
Select.
don't think there's gonna be a problem, because this
Because-
is something that's been coming up over and over. I think they'll be grateful
and I-
for the
yeah, because
input.
like I said, I don't think they wanna deal with it, and they just as soon see it
Resolved,
in the done code.
right,
Yeah.
yes.
So, thinking about the deadline for articles, we have the 6th, we have and I'm thinking that when we come to a meeting, we will have collectively ideas and I think we're pretty much in agreement with most of what's
Yeah.
already in place. There's just a few items, like it said,
Right.
section 4.
Agreed.
That needs, it just needs to switch, that doesn't need to be there,
Yeah,
and,
we don't need to break it all down, we just need to.
and that's the most recent vote of town meeting, and I think they looked at it the old way, it was just overlooked to change, oh, by the way, we're gonna make it this way, so we gotta eliminate that, and that's the step that was,
So at the
that was
end of
pointed out
that
by town
discussion,
council.
Jeff, sorry, Mr. Chair, if, at the end of that discussion, we will have a modified section of Article 4. It's Article 4, correct?
Article 4, and the
We'll
one,
have a modified Article 4, and because we're doing it as a committee, we'll have all of our signatures at the bottom of that.
and like I said, I'm thinking that we'll come in on a night, and maybe that's the only thing we're gonna do.
I think that's a great idea.
I do too.
And at the end of the night, we can say boom, and I can either walk it into the
That
office.
is a fantastic
the
idea.
next day or whatever. The day is just picking,
Well, it won't be the
and
next day.
I'm therefore, I'm thinking if we can make, that deadline, even if we waited till,
Well, it's
the
gonna be,
last
it's gonna
time.
be really critical because come, let's
The
see,
6th or
I think
the
it's
20th?
January 15th, the town clerk,
Sixth. Let's just
the
do it.
administrator,
You're not gonna be.
and the
That's next week.
town council are meeting on, and they're gonna talk about codification and all of that. And it's a large document, something like I thought I heard 100 pages of codifications on all the bylaws. And that's gonna, whatever that codification process did, will probably change some things. Let me just say this, is section 4, depending on what community you go to, they do the same thing as what we have in a modified sense. They end up inputting to the guidelines and what is required for the budget, and they're more actively involved. I found communities that actually have written financial policies by the advisory or finance committee. So there's a myriad of things out there.
So if there are things like that at this meeting, they should be discussed and whether we want them changed or not. I mean, what other communities do, it's a nice reference point, but it doesn't necessarily apply to the town of Templeton.
I will bring that codification book
Do you
thing
have,
back in, but I believe that when I brought it in and brought it up for discussion, but I've read through it. The interesting part about that,
is it not
they looked at our existing bylaw
electronic?
and checked it good.
Yeah?
It's just rearranged, And it's no longer gonna be Article 4, it's gonna be, they put them in some, I don't know,
Article
like
6
number
or
1
something,
to
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
4A, some different order.
Okay.
So it just got moved. It was funny, I thought it was odd that they looked at it and they didn't catch that Article 3, Section 4, Article 4, Section 4, that basically says, you know, the same thing.
Yeah, well,
But other than that, that company
probably
that
don't look
did
at
that
that stuff.
process, they checked a bylaw that's no, you know, no major changes, weren't violating, conflicting with any new laws or any changes in,
doesn't sound like they
anything
looked at
that's
it for
been done.
conflicts.
So, the issue is, the date, the meeting date that you wanna do this.
See, the only conflict I see in the
20th?
article,
I just wanna get a date for a meeting.
6th.
20th, I'm not here the 6th.
Well, if he's not gonna be here and she's not gonna be, Amy's
Oh,
not
okay,
gonna be
20th.
here either. She wants to do it the 6th, but she's not gonna be here, so I think the 20th makes more
You can
sense.
submit
Okay.
everything on.
I'd rather have full attendance if possible. I mean, these
20th,
are,
and then
well, these are
have
two
a real,
very important
have a
topics,
skinny
so-
agenda,
Yeah.
right?
Well, yeah, and
No,
maybe,
Yeah, it'll just be,
Lindsay
Okay.
needs a
I'm-
ride.
yeah, these, yeah.
Huh?
just to accept the minutes, so we can stay within the suggest
Can't
30-day
be here.
thing, and the bylaw, nothing else.
Yeah.
I don't wanna have
They
nothing
fulfill
else.
plans.
Yeah.
If we're gonna spend 2 hours chit-chatting, it'll just
Yeah.
be on that one thing.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea.
on the 6th.
Oh, yeah,
For your
20th.
Uber to
On,
Leominster,
on,
I don't
on the
think
the
20th?
20th,
Just
yeah.
Amy can't be here next week and Tony can't be here.
Oh,
next
okay,
Yeah,
okay,
so-
that makes sense.
I just
So-
think everyone should
Okay,
be
I didn't hear
here.
that, thank you for
Yeah, yeah,
clarifying.
And I know Deb said she would probably be here for the next meeting, but to give her time to do
Catch
her
up on those,
research
yeah.
and,
Yep.
and look at stuff.
Yep.
So the 20th?
Yep.
And that'll be our Christmas present to the town. Hoo-yeah.
I mean, we're just trying to straighten things out, not trying to take.
Let me just say one other thing.
Okay, December 20th.
Yeah.
It'll be the minutes and the bylaw,
Yep.
and that will be the agenda.
You want me to hold off on talking about the conflicts of other communities and what they
Yes.
do?
Yes,
Yes, Will,
Okay.
because you have several things on the agenda.
Because I bet a lot of information
Yeah.
on other communities here.
Okay, so, and like I said, to me, the Collins memo, that was the part that really, I mean, that affected this committee directly.
Yep.
If it's a reference, and that's what they used as a basis for when they wanted to do all those changes.
Yeah.
That was voted down.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I took some time this week, I read the entire thing, and a couple things stuck out. One, actually, for the most part, it's really well-written, and
Agreed.
as someone coming into town government somewhat new, actually quite new, is actually extremely informative.
Agreed.
In reading their proposals and then looking at what happened at town meeting with the proposed changes, everything kind of became clear at that point in time. So I can kind of see where things are at, but per the conversation here, I think if we can kind of take the lead on these items here, what Amy said, I think that would be appreciated by everyone and,
Mhm.
you know, kind of clear this thing, clear this up for us.
And, this was the spending of, well, it was a grant, I mean, it's tax money, but
Yeah.
it's the money that you sent to the state, and they sent it back, so we could spend it on this.
Yeah.
It's just that nice, wonderful circle.
So the only thing that we didn't talk about, to basically put the bow on the Collins memo thing, and we'll never talk about it and see it on the agenda again. So we have a way forward for article or, section 4. Their other recommendation was that, we continue with the town administrator and the selectmen being the budget genesis, and that we are the oversight for it. As long as the timing goes right, do we, and I don't think we'd have the time to go and do that in depth, but do we agree with the Collins recommendation that the town administrator and the selectmen are the genesis of the budget, and that we review it? We make
That-
recommendations.
that-
Well, it depends on how you want to approach this, because other communities get at least some input as to how the budget, the guidelines on a yearly basis.
granted.
I mean, that's by consensus. That doesn't say that they come and say, this is how you're gonna do it. And I don't believe that this committee has always taken the position of, this is how we want it. The position we've taken is, okay, this is what we need out of it. You can do it how you want it, but this is what we need out of it. And the timing and how we want it taken, presented electronically, et cetera, those type of things, I believe, are important to the
Yeah,
committee.
But that's not really what the Collins recommendation was. It was basically the high-level approach of, you guys are the legislative body that we always talk
Yeah.
about that, and you guys are getting basically a first chop of the budget. Not talking about timing, but if we believe in that, then we're good with that recommendation from the Collins.
Well, as long as they are willing to accept the fact that the budget that's presented under Article 30, what is it, 3916, is the one that's presented by the Advisory Finance Committee. If you look at most communities.
I know what you're saying.
That's the process that most communities use. We have not had input to that budget since this administrator has been there. We haven't had a
Because
call.
of the changes. Is that what you're talking about?
Pardon me?
Because of the changes that were not given in a timely fashion.
That's correct.
Okay, but we're trying to fix that in another fight.
Okay.
From the Collins memo point of view as an agenda item, I think that we're basically agreeing with that
The Article
recommendation.
3, Section 4 stays.
Yep,
And I think we should maybe also recommend to the selectmen, just as a suggestion, this isn't the advisory bylaw, but you might want to add, say, a 4A, or make the existing 4 a 4A, and put Section 4, creating the position of town administrator and his duties.
with
That
the
was
timeline.
in, that was in 2013, I believe, or, yeah, I think it was 13, that they created the position, and then the following year, in 14, they replaced that section with the current one, rather than adding another, a subsection to 4.
Yeah, but that would be under Article 3, because if you look at other communities.
That's what I said,
Oh. Yeah.
outside of the advisory
Right.
bylaw, Article 4,
Right,
we just give them a suggestion that, hey, under Article 3, put that original Section 4,
yeah,
and the 4 that's there now, make that a 4A. So it's very clear that town meeting voted to have a town administrator, and this is what he's gonna do. And oh, by the way, Section 4A, he's gonna do the budget, create the budget, along with the selectmen approving it, to pass it on to us. So that will be on the agenda for December 20th, will just be the minutes from either this meeting or the 6th, and the bylaw, and that's it, nothing else. So, Mike Curry is forever done with
Yeah,
the Collins memo.
that's right. Bye-bye.
And that was from the September 20th meeting, you know, that you was gonna, I thought that landed in your lap, you know.
Well, what I mean is, we're just not pushing it
I just,
as like a discussion item.
all right, the Chapter 90 process. The minutes reflected, and in the meeting, you all wanted to move that on for the next meeting. I don't know, I thought the questions that the committee had that Carter answered, but
are you talking about the maintenance of the road, or?
like I said, I put this on the agenda because,
Because he talked about the highway going
Is it here,
to
right?
be the maintenance of the roads and not any road
agenda items for
construction.
the next meeting,
Yeah.
impacts of
Yeah.
Chapter 90
No,
process
no, no, I just wanna,
change. So I don't know what,
just
the,
thought I saved
the
it.
committee's reason for,
Largely addressed by the town administrator.
was that tabled for a reason, or?
Well, he talked about the fact that they're going to do the maintenance on the road, not the drainage, just the maintenance of the road. And under Chapter 90, the monies, he had a sheet which broke out different things under Chapter 90 that would be done. I don't think you had a copy of that. Anybody
let's
bring
see.
their copy of that? I don't know if I have mine here.
Which?
The Chapter 90, how they, no,
Okay.
what he presented.
Certain things that you need to do,
I actually,
there's project requests, you have to, that's basically, it reimburses the money the town spends or city spends on their roads. And you're actually supposed to give this. Allocation. Propose a method of allocating Chapter 90 funds.
right, and I actually
The
kind of,
cover page is actually the second page.
Yeah,
It's
see,
stapled
all of
backwards.
these things you're supposed to, you have to
you have it?
present
I gave
them
it
to MassDOT, and we're in District 2. you have to present this to them and how you're gonna go about it and, about how much it's gonna cost and this and that. And they give their stamp of approval. And then you do the project and you take all the bills, and this is where the treasurer and everybody, it's sort of like the veterans item, where if you have to get the paperwork, everything done and submitted in on a certain timeline, or they'll just say, sorry, you missed that deadline, redo it, which I think has just happened recently with at least one project. And then you get the money reimbursed from the state. It's sort of like, they say, this is how much you guys are getting, your share from the gas tax money, but they kinda like hold it in like a separate little account, and you've gotta prove that they just don't give you that money and say, cause they know little towns will take it and spend it on, we need new, copy machines, we'll just take our chapter 90 money and spend it on this. So they hold that, and you have to present them the paperwork that shows what like, here's a bill for concrete for sidewalk, here's a bill for some drain pipe, here's the bill for the paving. And they go, oh, okay, so you actually did spend the money on what you said you were gonna spend it on, and they release that chunk of money so you can pay all those bills. And it looks like they want to, have money used for emergencies, for washout, sinkholes, catch basin failures. That's where if they go out and clean the basins, if they find one that's bad, they would mark it and go fix it. Routine maintenance for drainage, crack sealing, minor localized repairs. Equipment for routine road maintenance. I don't really like that a lot, but
Specific we need to discuss?
again, this comes down to a thing, like the city of Gardner, they bought a hot box. So they could not only get away from coal patch, but when they have leftover asphalt from a paving project, you pay for that. In some communities, they keep it. Gardner turned to the practice of bring that to the DPW barn and we'll dump it in a bin. When they grind a road, they take the grindings, we want some of them. Bring them here. And they bought a hot box, and you reheat that stuff and you can go out and patch potholes with it. And they actually saved enough money from not buying coal patch. They bought one with chapter 90 money. They saved enough money on not buying coal patch that the money they normally would have spent on coal patch, they bought another hot box so they can recycle this stuff. And their road boss actually goes, I went down and I met with them, and they showed me how they do it, and he explained what they've been doing and how they've been recycling or reusing materials that they've already paid for, and they're saving money. And he actually goes out and checks. They have a little vibratory machine, and they have some hand tampers, and he goes out and checks, and if it's not done right, he goes, these guys are going out this morning to redo a couple of holes. They just don't let their crew back over it once with a truck tire and then drive off down the road, because if it's not packed in right, the coal patch just washes out, and it's a waste of money. But that's the approach that they took, and like I said, instead of buying coal patch, they were recycling asphalt. They just reheat it, reconstitute it, so to speak, and use that to patch potholes.
I'm
So that was,
laughing because
good thing.
I'm thinking of the commercial, we should have a letter writing campaign to the Domino's folks. They have their patching truck come around, we got enough of them that they could take care of. Because they do the same thing with the hot patch.
The amount of coal patch
I
they
mean,
spend
I
on
mean, is there
Partridgeville
anything,
Goat Path, they could.
Jeff, other
pay
than
it.
the fact, I mean, Carter went over the chapter 90 stuff pretty extensively, and,
His plan to split everything out based on the study,
you know,
percentages of the $300,000 to $400,000 that we're gonna get
Yeah, roughly
over a
400.
10-year period,
Yeah.
yeah. Like in what they wanna use it for, but it's basically how much are you gonna add? If it's the 1.1 or $1.8 million model that you're gonna have to inject into it to take care of our problems, like, so that PCI thing, it's the pavement condition index,
Yeah.
we're at 54 in the state, so they judge us fair. Based on that, and then the categorization of these things, to stay at an even 54 you'd have to add 1.1 million or spend 1.1 million in addition to those other things to get even to a 57.
Right, and
So-
if we're fair, I'd hate to see poor.
I know.
Maybe the legislature will follow MMA's lead and get away from that
Maybe
200 and at least do
Yeah.
3, but they're recommending 600 million, because the majority of the roads in the Commonwealth, public roads, are owned by cities and towns, and I forget the exact, it's how many, I think it's like 600 and something million would be required in Chapter 90 funding every year just to get the roads to a decent, fair, or
A
good
safe, I
condition.
mean, there's some in there, in that study where they're not, they don't look safe when I drive down
And
where do
that's-
you live on, Partridge Hill?
Partridgeville Goat Path.
Yeah, that's, I mean, if you're not going 10 miles an hour in some sections, I guess my point is,
Where else
you
do
know,
roads
if we're gonna
similar?
have a turnover of selectmen and everything, I could see new selectmen coming in, going on a platform of, I'll come in with an idea to fix the roads,
Well, you
because
just remember that you're
that's
only
a
one.
tall order, huh?
You just remember you're only one. Of course, you could take the approach, but it didn't really work well in Winchendon. 3 selectmen ran, and they all agreed, this is what we're gonna do when we get in, because we'll be a majority.
Yeah.
And they started doing things, but then the old recall petition came out, because a selectman that lost the election got a little ticked, and it was an idea, a pretty neat idea approach, to, you know, selectmen coming in and say, hey, these are the things we're gonna do, and if we all vote for them, we can make it happen.
Well,
And
one
they were trying to
selectman,
do good things for the community, but it's, the old small town came into effect.
one selectman in our town ran on that and got their road redone.
Okay, so,
We have no recommendations, but we're advising caution, and, I think we're basically saying we gotta come up with a way to get a grant or otherwise to
it's-
get that to 1.8 million.
and you can't be buying big pieces of equipment, spending couple $100,000 of Chapter 90 money to buy equipment. You just can't do it, because you'll never, that's the
Agreed.
only little money you
Agreed.
get to fix your
I-
road.
Yeah, very much
Without
agree with you
a
now.
debt exclusion or an override to do the roads.
Yep.
Okay, so we're all set on,
We did ask about that, if there was gonna be an override from the administrator, and he said not at the present time.
they got a school override they gotta deal with. They ain't gonna create another problem
Oh,
for
it just,
themselves.
it was out there, I wanted taking it up, seeing what he had to say.
All right,
They talked about an override.
the next thing is our,
I didn't.
the next thing is a bill for pre-town meeting. Somehow, it went down. The advertisement for our pre-town meeting
Yeah.
last year, for the annual town meeting,
Yes.
was $64.
63.
Right, that was why we were questioning it, because it wasn't the right amount of money.
I looked at it, and,
Yeah.
Deb said, no,
Different company.
that's it.
So 2 things. Kelly sent out an email clarifying, our confusion was, we weren't getting another bill. It was just kind of a heads up, hey, a new company's doing this.
I looked at it, and it sounded like, oh, I got a bill from the Garden News, and I can't pay it, because it's gotta be
I
this.
think going forward, it's this new company that you
I
pay.
got an email from them, and I got 3 emails from Kelly clarifying what she had said, and the invoice says Telegram and Gazette, but you gotta make the thing out to Gatehouse,
Okay.
Right.
because they bought a bunch of small papers,
yeah.
like many
So,
large papers.
so the question is, do we have a bill we have to pay to
Yes.
Gatehouse?
Yes,
I make a motion,
$33.50.
I make a motion that we pay the bill.
Second,
Motion made and seconded to pay the pre-town advertisement bill of $33.50
$33 for 12
to
hours.
the Telegram Gazette / Gatehouse New England. Any discussion? Mike,
Yes,
Tony,
Yes,
Amy,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Will?
yes.
Alrighty. I'll pass that down and just sign it to the right, and if you run out of lines, just sign below or next to it, and I'll sign the department head one, so follow a little procedure request from the town accountant, and I get that in on Monday. I actually went back and looked at the paperwork to make sure I submitted the annual town meeting, pre-town meeting bill, and I dug up the receipt and said, okay, the 3350, it's, not many things go down. And this not only went down, it like cut in half almost. It's-
Oh, good.
Either this new company is doing really well, or the Gardner News was really,
Maybe it's efficiencies in their billing system.
God, the news really sticking to us, you saying?
Sorry.
you were getting the bare wood.
See that green light?
I know.
You got that. Okay, I will turn this into the account on Monday. All right, we have next three things. They're presentations or things from Wil Spring, the advisory committee SOP, the advisory committee roles and responsibilities, and the OPEB, other post-employment benefits, which is generally retiree health insurance, and it also deals with the retirement expenses. Now, at the beginning of the meeting, Will, you talked about maybe wanting to put some of these things off.
Yep.
So,
I can briefly talk about two of them. The OPEB, I would say, I didn't have copies. There's been a lot going on in the Spring household the last 2 weeks. I don't want to get into that. That's, as you see, my better half is not here again, and she's usually here with me.
I ain't gonna go there.
I need someone to keep them in
Maybe she
line.
might have.
So if you, I would suggest if you're not ready to talk about them, if we're gonna talk about them, I'd like to talk about them and get them off the agenda and not say, okay, we'll talk about it a little bit and then talk about it at the next meeting or whatever.
Okay, well, I'll
That's
just-
my suggestion,
Right, you don't have to, right?
yeah.
Because
What
one
you're
of
saying,
the
you
things
don't
that I was gonna just mention briefly, when I initially brought this up, I would say, I start pulling information from other resources. We agreed that we would do that in the September meeting, and as you heard, it was not a good 2 months for me.
Yep.
The last meeting, it came up. I got a chance to take and end up pulling some of that information from other communities. There's actually documents on some communities, and there's other communities that have it embedded right in the description of their advisory on their webpage. So I got a myriad of things to pull from. I'm working from those.
Okay.
I heard one thing about the responsibilities as far as I can't remember what Amy brought up now, about putting that into operating procedures. There are some things in the operating procedures, other communities, that do not pertain to us. And I want to take and end up making sure that it's relevant to our bylaws and the way we do business. My biggest concern was the bylaw, and if we keep it fairly to the way we're doing it today, it's not a problem, because I can reference that in the roles and responsibilities and kind of add to that. Some communities have as little as 1 page, some as much, they incorporate it in their operating procedures, 35 pages or more, depending on the community.
So, I get the feeling that
It's gonna be a while.
we
Okay.
should get the
Bylaw
bylaws
first.
straight first, then
Yep.
you can
Yep.
set the SOP responsibilities.
Right, I can
the
do some of the
bylaw.
responsibilities now, but if you change something in the bylaws, I will have to I can make those minor changes.
Rather than, we'll revolve those around the
You do something
bylaw,
twice.
rather than trying to stuff the bylaw to fit these things.
The operating procedure is gonna take longer. I expect that the first draft of that won't be ready till sometime in the April, May timeframe, because there's so much to it. It's to pull in to make sure that we incorporate everything that we do. And it doesn't fall onto things that we don't do.
Okay, so,
Oh, yes, I remember now. You said about the moderator is mentioned about the first place we go to on filling a vacancy. And again, that's a bylaw. If the bylaw stays, I can make that statement in the operating procedure saying, we go to the moderator and then to the administrator to see if anybody has an interest form.
So,
Right.
all those three things, the SOP, roles and responsibilities, and OPEB, we wanna just take them off until after, sometime after we do our
Yes.
The
bylaw.
bylaw.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
so you will not see those again for a while,
That's
Okay.
tabled.
okay? That's, all right, that will bring us to, revenue projections, whatever your,
So Carter kind of presented how they do their revenue projections, like we talked a little bit earlier, and it was some good insight on, there's no real exact science to predicting the revenue of a town. You just don't know. And so I thought he did a really good job of presenting how they do that. One of the big things I thought that came out of that was how the meal tax, how the numbers, if you see a month number, they're really skewed, and that you really almost need 6 months worth of data before you can start really looking at it. Just the way it's collected and sent back to the town, it's 2 or 3 months behind. So when they have a projection of X, it doesn't include everything. So I thought he did a really good job explaining how that worked.
Well, as I mentioned too, the Associate Town Finances, Alan Tossi has actually got a presentation on revenue analysis and forecasting. This is an older one, but I believe there's some newer documents that can be used to make the analysis and forecasting better, because the state has an area where you actually do 3 years projections for your revenues and your budgeting. This town should be doing that. It was suggested 6 years ago.
Well, we don't know that they're not doing that and just not making it public.
But that's part of your revenue projections and budgeting. I mean, that's a live document that other communities use. Some use 3 years, some use 5 years, and you can end up going on their sites and seeing in other communities. I don't see why we can't do that. This is for transparency, so people know where the town's headed financially. The town has the responsibility of letting their community members know what's going on and what's ahead.
I will say.
Is it an exact science? No, but it's a good indication of what's going on.
I will say one thing, if you, looked at the tax recap information, and you can either look at that all the worksheet and everything that the town administrator sent out, or you can just go to the DLS site and you'll get the 4 pages that's on there.
Right.
The actual receipts for 18 were 1,152,640. And in that revenue estimate that I believe it was emailed or passed out last meeting, you can go back to 16 where the motor vehicle excise taxes, it was 1,037,000. The next year was 1,080,000. The actual for 18 was 1,152,540. They estimated for 19 $1 million. And for 20, they bumped it up to 1,020,750. The administrator is, what he likes to do, rounded up to 1,025,025 is what he said he's gonna recommend for 2020. So they are kinda staying around the $1 million number that has been, since 16. And even 14 and 15 was in the 944 to 970 range, so you're approaching $1 million. 16, they overestimated it. They added they made it like 1,100,000 and something thousand.
Yes, and
We thought that was a little high, and we should have stuck to $1
we
million.
pushed back on that.
Looking at the past records. So this administrator seems to be adhering to sticking around the $1 million which in the last 4 years or so has been pretty much the benchmark.
That was,
So-
that was the thing that Paul Grubb did, is pushing back on that. He made that presentation about that.
So they may not be putting forth a complete document, but it seems, at least in this case, they are using, there's some kind of method behind their moves. And hopefully they are doing the same thing with things like new growth, where you can go back and look at the tax recap sheet, you can go back, look at years of them on the DLS website. Just, that's another thing, we thought in 16 they overestimated, and it turns out we were right. It wasn't the 80-something thousand that they were projecting, it was in like 65. And you just go talk to the assessor and see, when they're doing their, going out and doing their field work and looking at properties, they have a good handle on what they think and what permits are coming in. And so it's better to stay a little low and be surprised in a good way rather than the reverse. So I think they may be doing it, they just haven't put it together in an outline to put out there for the public to see. Perhaps maybe because the public doesn't seem interested in it, but at least in this case, it looks like they are following, going back and following a trend, which is good to see.
Yeah, because that was, we did the big pushback on the last budget, that a lot of the estimates were not conservative, they were they were pushing it,
So,
but very aggressive.
is there anything, and other concerns on the revenue projections, or, like I said, I looked at the minutes and listened to the meeting, and that was one of the things that you all wanted on this, so I thought maybe somebody had a question or found something or came across something they wanted to comment on.
I think in some cases, it's still on the aggressive side as far as what I'd like to see them be a little more conservative and get the surprise of having a lot of free cash
Okay.
and living within that budget. If you live within that budget, and this is a lot of money there, and I think you're gonna be able to end up making it on what's, even if it was conservative.
All right, lastly, on the last two items, the advisory committee bylaw subcommittee
We already
and
talked
bylaw
about those.
conflict. I believe, as Amy suggested, that that probably won't come to fruition, because if we take the bull by the horns, that will be several items that will be taken care of, and it will probably be welcome. And then Mike and I will be off the hook
Yeah.
from another thing to deal with. Like I said, I put that on there for
I talked
discussion, but
to the chair, Board of Selectmen, and they created, what I was unaware of is that they actually did create the authorization for the committee, or they created the subcommittee. I didn't know that, so they were waiting for us to come up with an appointment time, and I didn't know that they were waiting.
oh, I thought I forwarded that email from the town clerk that she had, I thought I forwarded that to you.
It might have got buried, but I
Because you
full
said
well,
that-
I
yeah.
said, I did not see it, so I was unaware. It's not that I didn't want to do it. I talked with Selectman Kaplis, and I know we're kind of, who they chose for it, we're kind of pressed for time, because I think his resignation is on the first
Yes,
fonts.
yeah,
We can
Yeah,
just get another
so
member.
it's-
I mean, we can still have the discussion. And Carter said, since I'm the author of this stuff, I can help, and I said, we're really looking just to deconflict and unconfuse what it is that we're trying to say in those, much like we said earlier in this meeting. So even if it's a 30-minute meeting with Carter, briefed before or after, I think we're gonna be fine.
yeah, it's, like I said, Amy's probably like 100% right on that.
I
It's
just haven't come up with a.
Because
we
I
haven't
thought I
come up with a
forwarded
time.
that email from the town clerk that she created the
Reasonable
spot on
thing to
town
do, say,
government
okay.
for it. But it's no meetings, and I've gotten no word from them.
Yep.
and,
Right.
I was actually waiting to see if they were gonna come up with a replacement for Forts and
So I think
send that
I think
out.
we have a game plan going forward, so I think we should just press with that and then not take up more of their time doing more committees. and-
And we'd send that to them and
Yeah.
then say, hey, if you wanna still have this to sub-meeting, or if you just,
We could go,
Come to you
we
and
could
just
come to
go
a
with
Board of
this.
Selectmen meeting and present it, so.
so that is that. Now, the last thing is, member comments. Does anyone have anything that they wanna talk about, comment, yell about, scream about, say,
No.
good job, Merry Christmas?
Not yet.
Oh, wait a minute, is it like Happy Holidays?
No, it's Merry Christmas for me. I mean-
That's right. At least there's one guy on my side.
No, I
Doesn't
mean,
matter, if someone wants to tell me Happy Hanukkah and I don't celebrate that, I still say thank you.
I mean, Hanukkah,
I
yeah.
don't care,
yeah, I don't
happiness
either.
is happiness, right?
Right, good
Long
point.
as
Take
it
it,
doesn't
have
matter.
it, enjoy it,
That's
I don't
right.
care.
Any-
Happy
so any member
Festivus.
comments?
Yes, I do. As always. I'd like to take and suggest that we end up inviting the town moderator. Why? I think it should be a joint effort with the town moderator and his advisory committee, which we are, to come up with a booklet about town meeting, like a lot of other communities have, which actually spells out the process on how voting is done, the process of, he comes to us after the motion's read first for our recommendation. If there's any presentations prior to the meeting, or a committee such as us, we can end up doing it as a with him, to let him know that we have a presentation about the committee, or in this particular case, if we do our job right, per se, and draw up some stuff around the bylaw, we can end up making some slides and presenting about the bylaw before we end up having a warrant article later on at town meeting, if that's the case. There's a lot of opportunities to spell out how it's done and what can be done. And working with him as to our role in that. It's a lot of communities work jointly with the town moderator. And I'd like to see that happen. He has not taken an aggressive stance on putting information out like that. We started to do that a number of years ago, and we lost the moderator that we were gonna work with, and now we have a new moderator. So, I mean, there's been a change since I've been on. We've had, this is I think the third or fourth moderator since I've been on. And when it was started was way back in 13 or so. There was this discussion, and it was gonna be started in 14, and it didn't happen for,
I think Derek's the third.
pardon me?
I think Derek is the third moderator.
So are you
Yeah, I
saying you
think
don't
so.
like the way town meetings run?
No, that's not what he said. He said he wanted to help promote education about town meeting.
You put a
and
booklet
the
out.
proper procedures, and part of the obstacle at town meeting, and I know, Derek was at the all boards meeting on Monday and spoke a little bit about this. Because he was asked what his challenges were as moderator, and he said one of his challenges is enforcing those rules and still respecting the fact that everyone has the right to their opinion,
Yep.
because, which he very much embraces that idea. He doesn't wanna cut someone off for talking too long because their opinion is valid.
Right.
But, we've only got, X amount of hours until we're flipping over to the next day and people have to work, and sort of a respect for time.
Yep.
So, I like
Right.
Will's idea to invite, Derek here and see if he's game for trying to draw something up.
Well, he's the present moderator. I mean, if that changes in May, then we have to start all over again. I mean, it's usually done between the finance or advisory and the moderator. Sometimes it's done with the town clerk and the finance, or just the finance. I've seen all three of those in my research of all the communities. If you look at enough communities, you see a myriad of things. But when they do have those, that at least they have a booklet, so they can end up looking, it's there,
Well, it certainly makes sense to have him help.
yes.
He is, in my opinion, which I know everybody has their own, but I think, in my opinion, he's the one with the authority on it. He's the one doing the work to create.
It's spelled
the
out
meeting
that
and-
use town meeting times,
Yep.
and he has to follow that. And there's, a lot of that is in town meeting times. And if it's not in print on some of the stuff on how it should go, then it doesn't happen. You have some of the older people that have been to a number of town meetings, they know what the process is.
Right.
So
Move the
that-
motion.
That's something we could approach after we get the bylaw stuff set. I mean, we don't wanna, I said, I'm gonna stick to that, two things on the agenda,
Yeah.
minutes and the bylaw, till we get that done, and we can present it to the selectmen, and hopefully we can say, good deal. Is that it?
That's enough for today.
Okay.
If I tell you all the other things I have on the thing, it would be too overwhelmed.
Well, two things, just while you're talking about the moderator. At the special town meeting in the fall, with regards to Derek, the moderator, and one town meeting member, Steve Drury, I thought, and I told Derek this after the meeting, that I thought he did that individual a solid, because he gave him so much time, and he gave him leeway at the end of town meeting to make his case, even as though someone had made a motion to dissolve the meeting. It hadn't been voted or anything on, but Derek was more than fair, and he gave that individual
Well, one thing that's gonna be,
great opportunity to make his case, to rehear that article. And my second thing is, watching the last advisory committee meeting, I will say, I enjoyed it. Not because I wasn't here, but,
it was because you were.
no, I enjoyed it because I enjoyed watching, and I leave you out of this. I enjoyed watching the new members, I call you new members, you've been here almost a half a year or so, but I liked the perspective and the questions and the new approach, and it was fun. Cause I really like this stuff, I really do, if nobody's figured that out. I really like everything. I enjoyed being a selectman, all the committees and all the meetings I went to, and I've kinda scaled back. But I like this stuff, and I liked watching. I just, the new concepts, new philosophies, new set of eyes on things, because I've sat here for 3 years with a lot of people, fortunately, unfortunately, that people, some good people come and they go, but I liked it. This is a good committee.
Yeah.
I liked it's fun to see, oh, yeah, I wish I had thought about that, or I sort of think like that, but I never brought it up. And you all bring up good questions and good perspectives and different views, and you're pushing, well, myself, that has, like I said, I have some preconceived and some tough things to change because of the history that I know and remember, but you're kind of pushing me to look a little more objectively, maybe. You're sort of twisting my arm, and it's good, and it's good for the people, and I think they watch it, and I hope they're happy with it, because from my perspective, 3 years on a board and 3 years as a selectman going to advisory committees, back when you had a pre-town meeting and the room would be full of people, it's fun, and I enjoy it, and I say good job, and I hope you all stay for a while,
Yes.
all right?
Let's see how that
Yeah.
With that,
bonuses.
Well, part of the thing that I was talking about the moderator is to take and end up clarifying
Huh?
that
That's
he
right there.
cannot spell out what goes outside of the meeting in the hallway.
well,
That's,
that's an
Okay.
interesting topic, and we will deal
So-
with that when Derek is
Yes.
here. I will
Make a
entertain a
motion,
motion
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
What he said. All those in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Yeah, let's keep talking. Meeting